Donald Trump Jr. is my guest. Good to see you again, my friend.
Likewise. Good to be back.
Triggered is the name of the book, How the Left Thrives on Hate and Wants to Silence Us. It's available now on Amazon. It's doing very well. I've listened to the audiobook. I've listened to about 7 hours of it. 7 of the 10 plus, I think it's, or
Probably
9
about
plus.
that, yeah.
It's a very comprehensive book. I know you're a lightning rod, and there's always controversy wherever you go.
I seem to be dominating like every day with the never-ending, outrage cycle. I seem to be a part of each and every one of them. It's amazing.
Well, I wanted to. So my thing was like I wanted to take a sort of psychological dive into that and how that works, because I've been thinking. I approach everything from sort of a psychological perspective, and then it turns into a comedic perspective. But at first, it's psychology. And I want to get into this hatred, which is different than a disagreement. Everyone disagrees with everyone all the time. But 100%. Then how does it spill into a loathing? Do you have, other than the disagreement part, do you have any thoughts about that from a psychodynamic standpoint?
Yeah, I haven't, other than, it just seems to be sort of a herd mentality, right? You see it every day. I mean, the example I used that I sort of most defined, just the crazy that we are living today was, last week when they killed al-Baghdadi, right? I mean, this is the founder and leader of ISIS, Adam. This is a guy that has doused journalists in gasoline and lit them on fire. Someone who's thrown homosexuals off building, raped, women, killed people all over the place. And, my father, I was at a speech with Pompeo. I didn't even know this at the time, but I was at a speech with Pompeo last week, and he said, when I was CIA director, the first thing Donald Trump said, I want to take off the head of the snake. That's the guy I want to go after. And so Donald Trump gets it, and in the Washington Post, where democracy apparently dies in darkness, the title of his obituary is Austere Religious Scholar.
Right.
And I'm just like, I don't know, what to talk about when you talk about the psychology, but if that hasn't, made someone lose their mind, that we can't even agree that the founder and leader of ISIS, the murdering piece of shit that he isn't, like, we're better off that they have to try to make him out to be, well, maybe he's a little bit misunderstood. That's the craziness that we're living in this day.
Right. And I was looking at it, and I was exploring it the other day. And I sit here next to Dr. Drew, and I sit here next to guys like Mark Garrigus, and I realize they disagree with some or half of your dad's policies, let's say. Maybe a quarter of what your dad's policies are. But they're not triggered.
Correct.
They're not angered.
Correct.
They don't have a visceral, he's a monster, he's got to be stopped. It's something that's triggered in other people, like a guy like Bill Maher. I said he's a very thin-skinned guy. Mark Garrigus probably politically aligns with Bill Maher, but he's not thin-skinned.
Correct. You've seen that. The outrage cycle, I used to think it was for effect, but it's not anymore. I mean, like, Trump derangement syndrome is real. I always joke the only cure is 4 more years, because we really have to reset, this conversation. Because if that can be the response, you see these guys, they can't even acknowledge that, like, hey, maybe I may not agree with the policies, I may not always like the messenger, but the results sort of speak for themselves. I mean, are they really upset with all-time low unemployment for African Americans? I mean, Bill Maher, I saw the clip, 2-3 weeks ago. You know what? It'd be worth it for America if the economy imploded, if people lost their jobs, lost their homes because they couldn't afford to pay their mortgages, just to get rid of Trump. I'm like, so you would really, you're okay, just, let's make unemployment numbers rise as opposed to lower. Let's make people lose their jobs, lose their homes, lose their families, just because you don't like Trump. Like, it seems outrageous, and that more outrageous is that people are like, yeah, I'm kind of with them on that one. Rather than, like, come on, man. Like, we're Americans. Like, can't we do what's right for the country? And
well, it goes, I don't know if you run into this a lot, but it's like, I toggle between Hollywood and Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager.
But no one else is willing to even play that game. So I commend you for actually being willing to do that. And so few in your position are willing to even take a right-wing stance because they know they're going to get canceled.
Well, the thing that's interesting is, first thing, I've not changed any of my thoughts in the last 25 years. I've always talked about family. I've always talked about education. I like competition. I want school choice.
Well, you're a racist.
Vouchers. I know.
Obviously, you're alt-right.
That's all I've ever said.
Yeah.
I'm a dumb guy from the San Fernando Valley who never went to college. I worked construction my whole life. I never had anything, and I've always had these thoughts. Now, I saw what successful people did. I went to North Hollywood High. We had my loser buddies. We had the black kids that were bussed in from the inner city. We had the Hispanics from the deeper valley. And then there was a handful of Jewish kids who lived up in the hills. Their families were intact. They made their kids do the homework. They ended up going off to UCLA and Stanford, and we went to a construction site and dug ditches. Yeah. I figured out early that was going to be the key. Families intact. Focus on education, and you may do whatever you want in this country.
And honestly, there's almost even attack on like family structure these days.
Yes,
I mean you say this, and I'm having this conversation with you, and it's like if I was in any other place in time, I'd be like, are we really having this conversation? Could that really? And it actually is because you promote family structure. Well, you're being discriminate against those who may not have the benefit of that, and like. That is such an asinine sort of viewpoint, and to be attacked for it is crazy.
First off, that is being racist. Assuming groups can't have families and educations or shouldn't do the right thing or aren't capable of it.
Math is racist today.
It's insane.
There's the problem with the whole racist thing from the left. I sort of say it in the book, which is racism has become the easy button of the left. If I can't win an argument with fact, if I'm not doing so well, if the fact set doesn't work out to my benefit, racist.
Right.
And so the problem is this. It's a real issue in this country. It's just not the only issue. It's not the cause of all of our problems. It's a much smaller thing. I don't want to say it's very small, because then someone will cancel me for not acknowledging it, even though I'm literally saying it's a real problem in this country. But it's not the answer to everything. And the problem we do is by calling racism on every issue that we're not in agreement with, you do a disservice to those who are actually afflicted. Because now when I hear it, I sit there, I roll my eyes, I move on. And the people who are actually hurt, which again, it's a much smaller amount than you'd like to believe, or they would have you believe, those people are left in the wake of that, and it's sad.
I have this statement, which is, there's never been a better time to be an actual racist, because you're going to get lumped in.
Hey, I get full coverage. This is great.
You get lumped in with Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro, and you and me.
Well, Ben Shapiro's incredible. And so is Prager. I mean, alt-right neo-Nazi Jews.
Right.
It's interesting. It's an interesting take. I mean, there's some psychology that has to go into that, but I don't quite understand. They do the same thing to my father. I mean, he's obviously a Nazi with a Jewish daughter that works in his administration, and son-in-law is like, man, Thanksgiving's going to really suck. That conversation is going to be brutal later on.
Well, once folks get on a sort of verbal ad hominem roll, that's hard to slow the roll. And what I say to people, there's a simple thing I've been saying to people a lot, and I don't know, this comes up in your world, I'm sure, where people go like, listen, I don't agree with a thing Ben Shapiro has to say. I don't agree with a thing Jordan Peterson has to say. I don't agree with a thing Dennis Prager has to say. But I do agree that they should have the right to say it.
Correct.
And most people go, oh, okay. But I always stop people and go, oh, no, you agree with about 80% of what Ben Shapiro has to say. Ben Shapiro talks about facts. They talk about family. They talk about communities.
Yeah.
They talk about working hard. He talks about spirituality. I mean, he talks about so many things that you would have to agree. And by the way, I know you agree because you live that kind of life as well.
Correct.
So this thing of going like, I don't agree with the thing Dennis Prager says, why even jump off there? Why not say we disagree about some things?
Yeah, well, I talk about it extensively in the book, which is sort of that notion of people have sort of been badgered into like, well, I can't admit that publicly. I mean, we did it. The interesting take that I talk about was, when we did our polling, like large sample sizes back in 2016, we do online and we do telephone polling, and statistics would dictate you're within basis points of each other, right? Not even percentage points. And when we did our online polling, we did 15% better than we did by telephone. So people were by themselves at their computer. They could do a little look around, be like, okay, no one's watching Trump. Okay, when they were on the phone, they weren't sure where the person was coming from. They didn't want to be called a racist, for wanting to implement policies that they felt would better their lives or their families or their children's or their American dream. But on the phone, you get answers like, Jill Stein overperformed incredibly. It was like, well, yeah, I'm writing in Jill Stein. They were like, so we were like, what do we do? How do we reconcile that craziness? And so we started asking those same people to kind of get to your, looking at it from a psychological standpoint. And we said, okay, you're writing in Jill Stein. Who's your neighbor voting for? Oh, that guy's voting for Trump.
Right.
I mean, they wanted to say it. They just didn't want to take all the heat associated with it. And that's where we are today.
It's a very human characteristic that most everyone possesses. Mm-hmm. A couple things. First off, in the book, you talked about being on construction sites as a young person. I have said this to anyone who listened in the last 5 years. I go, look, you have to build something. You have to have the experience of building something to be pragmatic.
Correct.
You can't just live in this world of ideas or I know in my heart or I feel this way, thus it is. When you build, you get a kind of a grounding and it's just in your veins.
100%.
And you can't make me feel something or believe in something or say something because I have so much building background. My thing is just calcs and lateral load and hold downs and all thread and shear loads and grade beams and how thick number 4 rebar is and number 5 rebar, and that's all my world is. So you can give me an idea, but if it doesn't make sense, it's not going to work. And I feel like when I listened to the book, the audiobook, Triggered, I got this feeling that you and your dad and sort of the whole Trump building side of the family got a grounding in building and the crazy pragmatism that takes.
100%. I mean, I think there's sort of two parts of that, right? First of all, my father was a better builder than other developers because he didn't just isolate himself in like a glass tower somewhere, listen to guys that are looking at a spreadsheet and telling you how to build. I mean, he actually got down on the ground with the construction workers every day. Like, he'd ask them questions. He'd be at a job site at 6 a.m. and, hey, how do you think we could do this better? What do you think about this? They say, hey, this contractor's kind of screwing you a little bit over here. If you did this, you could bypass this amount of duct work, have more efficiency, save some money. So he got, a real-life experience. That allowed him to be better. It also translated later on into politics where, like, well, how does this brash billionaire from New York, how is he able to talk to regular people? He spent 40 years talking to regular people. For us, for me, for my brother, we grew. I always joke, I'm the only son of a billionaire that can drive a D10 because I've actually done it. I've run chainsaws. I change out my own bar oil on the weekends when I'm doing it. We did that, and he wanted to make sure, hey, if you're going to be a builder too, you better damn well know how to do it, and not just in theory. Like, you're starting at the lowest rung. You're going to dig a ditch because if someone else is going to dig a ditch and they're going to charge you for it, you better know how long it takes to dig a damn ditch. And so, he made us do those jobs. I mean, my first job was away from home at like 15 as a dock attendant, in Atlantic City. Like, I lived away from home at summer as a 15-year-old to like hook up electrical systems, water systems. I then went into landscaping and running machinery, running chainsaws. Like, he made sure we worked. And some of the executives, even in his company, were guys that didn't have JD MBAs. There were guys that worked their ass off on a construction site. He's like, you know what? There's a street smart. There's something like you have, right? That you got through that without the acronyms behind your name. And he'd give them a chance and give them a little bit more and a little bit more. And they continued to excel and exceed. And that's why you had so much of the loyalty within our company, because those are guys that know they'd never be where they are today in a company if it was a typical executive that just sort of say, well, I'm hiring based on XYZ credential and that's all we can possibly do. He gave those guys a chance of a lifetime, and they'll run through a wall for him.
We have, by the way, so I was listening in the book, and Donald Trump Jr. said, I can tell the sound, I could tell you the difference between a Sawzall and a circular saw simply by sound.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I think I could too. And then I thought to myself, I have those two items.
Correct.
So I told my guys, hook them up in the back and put a mic there, and we will try this. I'll tease it. I'll tease it a little. I had so many thoughts when I knew you were coming in. I had a dinner with a very good friend of mine, who's very Hollywood, very Santa Monica, very progressive, But he respects me, and he respects my take on things. And I gave him an answer to this question, and you tell me what it feels like to you. He was saying, what's your take on Donald Trump? Like, you know him a little bit. You've been around him. What's your take? Because I know everyone in Hollywood just thinks he's a madman. And I said, I think he has a big ego, and I think he treats this country like it's his business, and he wants the business to succeed.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's anything nefarious. And I think you can also disagree with some of the moves, like you would disagree with somebody making a business decision.
100%.
But I think it's a guy with a huge ego who wants his legacy to be, when I was running this company known as the United States,
it did well.
It did well. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's actually very fair. I mean, you can see that. I mean, one of the examples I like to use was they're building the new Air Force One. There's two planes sort of matching, and he calls Boeing. He goes, listen, I got a big Boeing himself, right? He's like, I know what these planes cost. Like, how come two 747s cost $4 billion?
Right.
And they're like, well, there's a lot of extra communicate. I get that. He's like, still seems kind of high. Do it for less. Okay, we'll do it for $3. And he's sitting there like, what? Like, well, how come no one else? Like, you can do it for $3? He's like, yeah, we want to have good relationships with the government. We do a lot with them. Like, yeah, we can do it for $3. And he goes, well, why didn't you do it before? He goes, well, no one ever bothered to ask. No one even bothered to ask in the years prior. To all of this, they're used to just giving you've seen it, the proverbial $400 hammer. It's like, well, because no one gives a crap. No one's in government. So few have ever actually run businesses. So few have ever had people's livelihood, their family's well-being dependent on their success every day. That's what he had for decades. The weight of the world, thousands of people dependent on him winning every day. That was what was going to feed their families. And so, I will say it's so nice to have a politician who's actually signed the front of a paycheck for a change rather than just the back. And, I think that resonates. And that mentality of like, well, it was a 2-minute phone call. I saved $1 billion. It's like, who's building the aircraft carrier? How many billions can we save off that one? And he's just going to pick up the phone and do it. And those are the sort of the unsung things that he's literally doing. And I think it's a big part of why so many, even in the establishment, push back. Because they're like, well, we've never questioned those guys because we want to get on the board of XYZ company when we retire here because we gave them a cush deal and they sort of owe it to us later on. And that's the sickness of the swamp.
We have the tools ready.
Oh, let's do it.
We also... I was interested in your background. I was interested hearing about the book and your grandparents and Czechoslovakia and getting a taste of communism firsthand, early and often. And it was funny. I was just like listening, and I was walking my dog, and I was thinking about your life growing up and my life growing up. And they really couldn't have been further apart. They couldn't have been further apart. But we did sort of arrive at the same destination, which is I don't like communism. I don't like any version of it. I don't like freebies. I don't like freebies not because I don't like people. I believe it makes them weak.
Correct.
And you hurt the group you're giving the handouts
100%.
to. And you always qualify it by saying, of course, when people are stricken with horrible diseases and everything, they need wheelchair ramps. A certain percentage of people, I get it.
Yeah.
But it's sort of the same conversation you have with, like, of course, there's some real racism.
It's the AOC Green New Deal, and we're going to pay for those not willing to work. I go, wait, not willing or not able? Because there is a distinction that you're drawing.
It's all you have. And I grew up with a little slice of communism in North Hollywood, California, because I lived in a broken down house that was my grandparents' rental property. It was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath pile of junk. They bulldozed it since, but it was a free house. I got a free house. My mom got welfare and food stamps. I got free lunches at school, and I understand just how debilitating
100%.
that is. My mom couldn't get out of her own way. She was just stymied by it. She wasn't compelled to clean herself up, and I just watched her just spiral. Like, she literally just put on weight and sat in her room and waited for that next government block of cheese to show up. And I realized it hurts people. You didn't
Without
help.
question.
You didn't help. You thought you were helping my mom. You were not helping my mom. You were hurting my mom. And you went to Czechoslovakia as a young boy. Tell us that.
Well, it's interesting because, again, I have to, in 2019 especially, I have to disclaim everything being like, yes, I recognize that I'm the son of a billionaire from New York City. So, but I have a mother that escaped communist Czechoslovakia. She was a good athlete. She was able to do that. She was able to come here legally. I know that's not a distinction most people won't make. But my grandfather was a blue-collar electrician from what was then communist Czechoslovakia. And I remember as a kid seeing my parents' wedding photo. I was like, okay, so, well, there's my grandfather, there's my mom, where's my grandmother? And they wouldn't let her out of the country because they, if they both left the country, they're never coming back. They would defect, right? And so I was like, what kind of system does this? And, I spoke to it at length with my grandfather who, again, blue-collar electrician, similar, background perhaps to yourself, right? And from that part of the world, and he recognized the incredible blessings that we have in this country, the freedoms, all of those things. And he's like, listen, he's had the conversation with my father. He's like, he's got to see the other side. And so from the age of 5, they were involved in my life. I spoke the language fluently. From the age of 5, they brought me over there. And my first memory of fear, and I don't have many memories from like 5, 6 years old. I don't think any of us do, but was going over there, and it was early 80s. It was pretty cool. I was wearing a jean jacket with the stars and stripes on it. And I remember getting pulled out of line by a guy in a drab communist era type military thing with a AK over it. And he's starting to question me, like, was I there essentially trying to promote America and capitalism? And I was 5. I'm not one of these woke 5-year-olds like you read about today on Twitter. Well, my 2.5-year-old questioned me about nuclear proliferation on the Korean Peninsula, and so. I remember that, and it just struck me so much. Then I'd go and, it wasn't helicopter grandparenting. It was like, you're going to the store. I've waited in those bread lines. I've been in empty supermarkets waiting for bread. I can promise you it's not nearly as glamorous as Bernie Sanders would make it out to be. And so I've lived it from such different perspectives, but I saw that every summer until the fall of the wall. And I saw what that system did to great loving what would have been hardworking people, but when there was literally no incentive to do anything more, basically people did the minimum because there was no upside, and it destroyed people, and it destroyed work ethic, and it was terrible. And to this day, it's sort of interesting. My grandmother is not alive; she's still 93 years old, and she lives over there, and she only gets sort of CNN, right? Because they don't have an alternate programming type of deal there, and so she'll call me in tears. Now, this is not some weak little nothing, she's an older, frail lady now, but she hid from the Nazis in the basement of her farmhouse for 2 years, during World War, II, as a, late teen, I guess, early 20s. She lived through 40 years of communism, and she's there calling me like every couple of weeks. And you can't let this become, a thing in the United States. It always sounds so good. It's always free. Everything's always great. It's not done. This is a woman who's been through a lot in tears, calling me, her grandson, for fear of my future, for my children's future. She's watched her daughter live that American dream. She knows how bad it can be on the other side. And, this is driving a 93-year-old woman to tears. And I always say, these people it's no longer a fringe element of the left that's pushing this sort of socialist, communist nonsense. These are mainstream leading candidates. And I say, simple question, man. We've seen the debates. You'll get a Democrat at this point. We shouldn't even say Democrat because there's a couple still reasonable ones left, although they've been put in a corner. You get a leftist to say just about anything, right? I say, why don't they have someone who's actually lived under these regimes, under these systems? You have all of Eastern Europe, you have the former Soviet Union, you have China. Closer to home, you have Cuba and Venezuela. Probably 100 million people. How come there's not one person from there that lived under it that's willing to come here and say, no, we got to bring that shit here. This is awesome. Well, it doesn't exist. It's scary, man.
I have a couple thoughts. One is, as I was listening, and capitalism, and we're both big fans of that, and how it's sort of, I don't think people understand how important working is to human beings, especially if you live in the United States, and how it just sort of robs you of your dignity and your person. You lose a lot of your personality. I started thinking about socialism and communism and authoritative dictators and things like that. I said to someone the other day that our market, capitalism isn't a system. It's what happens when you leave people alone.
Correct.
So these other places are a system that's imposed. If you just took 100 people and put them on an island, capitalism would spring up.
Correct.
Somebody would just go out and get abalone from the sea.
Do a little bit more and eat a little bit more.
And another guy would weave a basket, and at some point you'd trade that guy for his basket and you'd give him some abalone. Like, and then we'd have coconuts and we'd use them as currency. It's just what is. So to me, when you're fighting capitalism, you're fighting what is, and that's why it can never naturally work out. That's why there is no version of it working out.
Well, I think 100%. And if you look at the alternative, you can, point to an example where it's succeeded. I've seen it kill hundreds of millions of people. I've seen it decimate economies. And the notion that, hey, it's failed 100 times over and over. It's killed 100 million plus people. But you know what? It's going to work this time. It's the slippery slope that my grandmother is so worried about, Adam. That's the thing. It always sounds so good on paper.
Yeah.
It always sounds so good on paper, and it's dominating academia and all of these things. But again, where's that person who's actually lived it? Where's that person who's actually experienced it? They don't exist.
Well, what I always say, I sort of describe it this way because I'm a car guy. You go to Jay Leno's garage, and he has Chrysler made a turbine car in the early 60s, kind of experimental car. And it makes a cool sound, and it'll run off Chanel No. 5 or kerosene or anything. And it's really cool.
Yeah.
But it seems like the future.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work.
Correct.
It just doesn't work. Now, the old internal combustion engine that Henry Ford put in his first car, that's what works the best.
Right.
And when I hear guys like Bernie Sanders talking, I hear him go, well, we're not going to do a turbine car. That doesn't work. We're just going to do sort of a turbine car. And I'm like, no, this one works.
Yeah.
That one doesn't work. And your version of the one that doesn't work is still not going to work.
I think 100% right. And that's what it is. But the real problem is, because I feel like mainstream media, pop culture, everyone's made this cognizant decision to sort of be the marketing wing of the left. It's really hard because you don't have anyone holding them to account. You saw, Green New Deal. It's so wonderful, right? $93 trillion. That's 15 times what the U.S. government brings in a year in revenue. So if you don't do anything else, not a road, not a school, not a plane for the military, you could maybe pay to stop cows from farting and eliminate air travel over 15 years. And, all of the leading candidates in the presidency, they sign up for it. What's more scary is that they got sort of conned into, signing onto a plan put out by a freshman congresswoman who 2 weeks prior didn't know the three branches of government, but they're all sort of signing on. Mitch McConnell actually did something. He goes, okay, let's vote on it. Oh, well, that's political theater. I was like, no, you guys all signed on to this thing. We're going to let you vote on your bill. Isn't that the nature of it? And him letting them vote on their bill is political theater, but them grandstanding about how wonderful this is and it's going to magically pay for itself isn't. And that's the problem. There is no one there holding people to account. I think Trump is that guy. I think my father's that guy, and that's what drives them crazy. It's like, oh, man, we can't get away with this shit anymore because someone's going to be there. It sounds hard to believe because, hey, he'll get on Twitter and he'll send some fire stuff off, but, he's actually the adult in the room as it comes to sort of fiscal responsibility with these sort of things. And they are not. But there's no one calling them out. They're just like, you know what? It sounds good. We want these guys to win. We're going to pretend that Elizabeth Warren can come up with a $52 trillion plan over 10 years. That's $5 trillion a year, about 90% of U.S. government revenue, to eliminate private insurance that most people are very happy with. It's asinine.
I want to make a distinction. Dennis Prager does it all the time between left and liberal. I think of myself as liberal, but I don't think of myself as left.
Yeah.
And I think Prager feels that way, and I think you feel that way to a degree as well. Like you're live and let live.
100%.
Sexuality and that kind of stuff.
I did. Dave Rubin earlier today. I've been talking to him for 8 years. He's a gay guy. I'm live and let live to a point. Where I use, the example I use in the book is, the trans movement today. I think I could care less, man. Identify how you want. I'm happy people are productive people. They will get stuff done. I think that's wonderful. Do what you want. It's when I started seeing, guys at, 25 that were, weightlifters. They say, you know what, I'm going to be a woman now, and I'm going to compete against the women, and I'm going to break every single world record in a matter of seconds. I see it with, the bike riding world record, and it's like,
yes,
where are the feminists? Where are the feminists
They're
that fought for
scared.
Title IX? No, but that's my point.
They're
The example I
scared.
use in the book, you may not have gotten there yet, is Martina Navratilova, right?
I got there.
She was, she's a, lesbian. She's been an LGBT activist for 40 years, which is about 35 years before it was cool.
Right.
She did this thing. She led the movement. She led the charge. She came out as one of the most accomplished female athletes in history and was like, yeah, this is ridiculous. And like her people destroyed her.
Right.
She was canceled. 40 years of, LGBT, activism meant nothing. She had to walk it back within days. Her career was over. So 3 weeks later, she has to come out hitting Trump. Now, no one talks about, like, we knew her growing up. Like, she had a similar story to my mother. They're both Czech. They're both athletes. They both escaped that. They don't talk about that. So she hits Trump because that's the penance that you have to pay to try to be welcomed back into woke society. And that's the thing. There is no... You can never be woke enough today, Adam. Like, if you're woke now in 15 minutes, like, you're alt-right, and you can't keep up with it.
I always tell people it's called a progressive movement. It's got progress and movement in the title. It never stops. It just keeps moving.
Correct, but it gets to a point where it's asinine. It gets to a point, like, I can be as live and let live as you want, but you start taking away a scholarship from a young woman who worked her ass off for her whole life to be the best in her state, in the country, in the world, and she's being beaten by 3 trans runners who were men the year before, and that they're taking her scholarship, they're taking her ranking, whatever it may be. I say, where is this? The example I like was that MMA fighter.
Yeah.
Something Fox.
She cracked someone's skull.
She fractured the orbital bone of a female opponent in the first round of a fight. Like, well, yeah, because she was a dude a few weeks before. You know what I mean? Like, that we cannot even address that there are biological difference, whether that be bone structure, muscle density, lung capacity. Like, come on, like, this was basic science, about 3 weeks ago.
Right.
And today it's like, no, they were all wrong on this one. It's nuts.
I want to talk, when we got the tool to do,
Okay.
I want to talk about, listening to the book, there's a couple things I got, and things I don't think people know about you. I don't think they know how much time you spent outdoors.
Yeah.
I don't think they know how you took a gap year and just moved to Colorado and worked as a bartender and just went out hunting and fishing. Like, you also out 28 days in a row, I believe. Yeah. Just you and a Jeep and like a rifle. And
bow. That was actually a bow, but yeah.
Whoa. So going out just alone 28 days?
Yeah, or sometimes with friends, but I mean, even before that, that was my gap year. I mean, I moved out to Colorado, worked in a bar, so I could have my days to fish and hunt, during the seasons, and just make sure that I knew what I was getting into, joining a company. Or I didn't want to have that regret some Saturday night at 2:00 in the morning when you're trying to close a deal, be like, man, I wish I did something else. So it was awesome, but it also made me realize that I was hungrier for more than just that. So I am a really passionate outdoorsman. I spend all my weekends. I'm not like sort of on that New York City like rubber chicken dinner charity circuit. Like, I'm actually much more at home with sort of just blue collar guys. And like when we got into politics and I'd go to Iowa, you'd see all these politicians, then they're showing up with their token friend from Iowa that they met 5 minutes before. I'm like, well, I'm there with my buddy in the state police who I mentioned in the book. It's like, yeah, I've been sleeping on his couch during deer season for the last few years, but like, you guys do you. I've always had probably more of that affinity towards blue collar America. Again, it's where I spend my time. Again, full disclaimer, I get it. I'm the son of a billionaire from New York, but like, that's sort of my happy place. I've been dating Kimberly for a while. She's like, how come I spend more time with guys that are hunting? Like, we don't even know any of your New York friends. It's like, I deal with enough heat on a daily basis. Like, that's my happy place. That's where I go to get away from it. And so, it's where I do spend my time and all my vacation time. I don't vacation at some luxury resort that often. I go to some occasionally, but like, my happy place is, put a backpack on me, give me a rifle, drop me off in the Yukon, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Like, I'm going to live out of a backpack and tent. I love that aspect of it.
You mentioned in the book you stopped drinking.
Yeah.
But you didn't mention you were sober, quote unquote.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much, I'm sober. Like, I have my father had that in his genes, and that's why he never drank. His brother died of alcoholism. I used to, party pretty hard, that way. And I think the one thing I had is, a strong willpower to sort of stop, but I can't do it part way. Okay, it's just not my personality. Meaning I can't sort of, I can have a couple beers with you or whatever, and be fine. But guess what? The next time I have it, there's going to be a couple more, and the next time a couple more, and the next time, and it just gets me to a bad place. And so, I'm sort of an all or nothing personality for it. So I just have to stop.
Where, as I was listening to the audiobook, and you're talking about hitting the campaign trail, and there's many stories about sort of being up for 40 hours straight, and going from one event to the next, and your dad's famously has that ability to stave off sleep and exhaustion and everything else that everyone seems to experience. Is that somehow in the genes? I mean, I don't know. Most people hit a wall after being up for 20 hours straight or working X amount. And I have a strong capacity to do that, but I don't think I have the Trump genes.
Listen, I do think there's an element of it. I mean, I followed my father around my whole. I mean, you want to wear yourself out, like follow him around a construction site. Like you'll be there at 5 a.m. You're still going at 7 o'clock at night. Be like, you can't even imagine. Like you've covered it all 50 times, but he's still. He's always had that. I mean, I used to get the call sort of at early 20s, like starting to work, and like, hey, why aren't you in the office? I'm like, well, it's 5 in the morning on a Saturday. Like, I'd be smart ass. Like, hey, why aren't you in the office, Dad? He's like, I am. I'm standing in your office right now, and you're not here. I'm like, oh shit. Like here, he's always had that. I think I definitely got some of that capacity. I just sort of, even in the book, I talk about literally I lost 25 pounds because it's like I could do a fundraising call or another speech or call into a radio show, or I could have lunch, which I don't have unlimited time, so I could do one or the other. So I lose 25 pounds. It was interesting as we're on the book tour, because you've done this, I'm sure. It can be pretty brutal. We're doing that. And my publisher, who's Center Street, like this is a big publisher, they go, we've never seen someone work that hard on a book tour. And it's just sort of, well, if I have a job to do, like, that's what I'm doing. Like, I'll worry about sleep later. I'll take care of that when I'm dead. Now, I think my father has sort of this genetic capacity to keep that pace on 4 hours of sleep sort of.
What is his actual, and I have a couple of questions. One is, I'm an atheist, but I just feel like I want to make hay while the sun's shining.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm going to get my car and drive across town, I tell my assistant, line up some interviews. I'll do them from the car, because otherwise it's a waste of time.
Correct.
And I don't think it makes me super motivated or super hard driven. It's just I'd like to be more effective with my time management. Is that a feeling that you have?
I mean, he doesn't waste time. I mean, but listen, he still enjoys life. I mean, you could have. I mean, no one knows more about sports than my father. He sees that. I mean, he'll remember guys' stats from years before. He's got the memory side of that as well. But there's always something accretive for him. There's never he doesn't lounge. He doesn't vacation. When we were back in the day, if he played golf, he played at his courses because he was like, well, we're going to move that tree over there. We can make this hole better by, moving the green here. And if we take the sand trap. So he's always sort of tinkering. That's his thing. So whatever he's doing, that's his work. That's his vocation. That's his passion. He's not one of these guys that shows up to work and says, oh, shit, I can't wait till 5 o'clock so I can get out of here and do the next thing. I mean, his work is his hobby, and when you combine those things, he just wants to do them 24/7, and that's what he does.
What is his schedule, if in fact he has a schedule? Like,
it really is.
What time does he go to bed, and what time does he wake up?
He's generally, if he sleeps, it's oftentimes early, but then he wakes up insanely early. So, I would say it's literally not an exaggeration to say he probably sleeps 4 to 5 hours a night. So, when you go to bed is one thing, but we'd see that during the campaign. I mean, it was like, you'll get the call at like 3:30. Yep, your dad just sent out a tweet. Let's get you on radio. You gotta go talk about it. And so, he's never needed it. He's just had, sort of a whether it's a blessing or a curse, who knows? But he always goes, and has never needed that much sleep. It's not one of those guys that brags about it like, oh, it's so great. He just never has. Like, he'll go to sleep. He's not setting an alarm clock. He just wakes up. Once he's up, he just goes. Like, it's not like, okay, I'm going to obligatorily set an alarm clock and I'm going to be miserable all day and sleep through it. On the campaign, it was incredible. Like, I saw him go. And, like, listen, when you're on a campaign and you're giving 5-6 speeches a day in front of big crowds, like, you need to put out energy to get it back, right? It's not like, sitting there on a couch watching TV all day. It drains you. And I've seen him get out of there, finish up a speech at 11 o'clock at night, get on his plane, take a red eye to the other coast, literally talk with his advisors all day, not utilize that 4 or 5 hours of flight time to take a nap, land, go right into TV, and do another day of TV, 6-7 speeches, and not having slept at all. And honestly, at the end of the second day, he may be a little grumpier than he was at the end of the first day, but like, it's not like he's collapsing. It's a little freakish.
You ready to name that tool?
Let's do it.
All right. Now, I don't know which one they're going to play.
Now, these are proper, like, solid electrical. It's not like the battery-operated ones where, the sound isn't there because the power is not generated. Because I just want to put some disclaimers in here.
I think they're both plugged in.
Because it should be obvious just from the spin-up. You know what I mean? The circular saw versus the sort of reciprocation of the sawzall, right?
It'll be obvious to us. I don't know if it's obvious to everybody. And I was gonna mix in maybe an orbital sander or belt sander or router, but I thought, let's not muddy it. You said two. You said in the book, I can tell the difference between a sawzall.
Let's do it.
Sawzall, by the way, a brand name. It's really
a reciprocating saw.
Right, reciprocating saw and a circular
But see, I know
saw.
that, so I get a little cred right off the bat, right? Because I wasn't planning on this that being a question.
It's a reciprocating saw. That's exactly what it is.
So even if I blow it now, I get a little street cred.
You're going to get it. All right. Well, you know what? Don't say it. Write it. Just go A and B, and you write it down, and I'll write it down too. All right,
okay.
You ready?
Yep. I already know.
All right, and we'll do B anyway.
It's over.
All right, B. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean that. Okay. Well.
All right. It's easier than I thought. All right. Would you like to go?
Well, A is obviously the circular, and B is the sawzall / reciprocating.
Yes. All right. I'm saying yes.
You can tell from the spin up. I mean, I was going to say before the circular has that spin up while you're getting the blade sort of moving, and then it steadies out. The reciprocating is reciprocating, so it always has that reverb.
I know. I was just walking my dog hearing the audiobook, and I thought I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't bring those things in and play name.
By the way, you're going to get canceled because someone's going to say, "Oh, it was too easy. You should have come up with some asinine challenge like the difference between a 5 horsepower motor and a 4 horsepower motor."
Well, there are that are more difficult and more nuanced, but those were the two you cited in the book, so those are the two I brought in.
Well, at least they can't say I'm totally full of shit.
All right, I think we're getting into a rant mode here. Let's see. So predictions coming up. What do we got for the next election? What are you thinking?
Listen, we'll go through, obviously the nonsense of sort of the impeachment. We saw this the first time around. I obviously go into the Mueller hoax in the book pretty extensively just because, I think it's safe to say that I was the number 2 target of that when you have half of Congress saying they're going to put you, they're going to try you for treason, kind of a big deal. So, you'll see some of this nonsense. I think in the end people win. I mean, the economy's crushing it despite literally a cognizant effort by the media to be like, it's almost too good, let's hope for a fail. I mean, you see them trying to come up with any stats, and then the job numbers come out the next day that are like, again, they beat expectations by a significant margin. You see them like almost like, shit, that means Trump's going to win again. Like, the reality is, man, things are good. People are doing better. Jobs are coming back. Despite the hatred. More importantly, I think the hatred is so overplayed at this point that reasonable people get it. The example I use in the book is sort of 2020 when we launched the campaign in Orlando. 47,000 people showed up, Adam, to a stadium that holds 25, right? So
I'm sorry, 2020?
2020.
Oh, when you launched.
When we launched the campaign for 2020, right?
Okay,
so back in January, we did that in Florida, and it was an amazing thing. 47,000 people show up in an arena that holds 25. They stood out there for 2 days in the rain and thunderstorms. I was worried no one was going to be there left, and you get out there and they're so excited. I introduced the vice president who introduced my father. Like, it's electric. This was right after the Mueller bullshit sort of came out. And I was like, Mr. Mueller, have you actually read the Mueller report? It was like, crickets. And I got back and I got done with that. And it was just this warm thing with so many people partaking in the political process, just excited to be, again, living that dream that they believe to be, substantially better now than before, even better than what they had hoped would happen in 2016. Because now you actually have results to back up what were promises. And we're used to being promised a lot of things by politicians. Delivery is a different story. And I got done. It was this awesome event, and I turn on the TV, and you see these guys in the mainstream just, did you see those people? They were out there in flip-flops. That must be their formal attire. Ha, 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 ha. I mean, this is like mainstream stuff. This isn't like fringe elements. Like, they're on MSNBC. And there's that level of the disdain for just hardworking Americans, yet that's honestly, it's shocking. It's frankly, it's freaking disgusting.
Well,
and like I saw that, and it just makes me so pissed off. But they still don't get that those guys see that. they still don't get that even through their filter that's 93% negative, like people are able to look through that and be like, yeah, no, this is pretty good. Like they've overplayed the hand so much that I think it has less efficacy than it would if they were even a little bit reasonable with him.
I agree.
And that's the problem. People are like, okay, here we go. We see it again with sort of the, now it's, Ukraine, the whistleblower. It's like the outrage cycle was me outing the guy, like we discussed. It's like, well, I didn't out him. Like, it was his name's in the title of it, and they just, no one wants to talk about the guy that he's out there with Biden as his guest at a state dinner, that he's literally there, buddies with Brennan, and like, guys, we've been through this hoax the first time. Like, you want it to be this innocent public servant, but he's not. He's a deep stater. He's very well tied with these guys, and again, the people were fooled. Now, if they didn't go all in on collusion, where it's obviously there, and guys like Adam Schiff, since we're in his district, I've seen evidence. I'm like, wow, you've seen evidence? You didn't show it to Robert Mueller? Like, that's sort of shocking. Like, you've seen it and you say it for 3 years to the American people. Like, well, then it doesn't exist. Then there's no accountability. There's no credibility. And so, like, we're just seeing version number 2.0 of that.
I saw Adam Schiff this morning at KTLA.
You call him Pencil Neck?
I asked him if he had anything to say to you, and he said if he did, they couldn't print it, so to speak.
Well,
so just obscenities.
Hey.
They're giving me the wrap it up, so I shall respect the finger going in a circle.
Well, we'll have to do it again, man. That was fun.
I appreciate it. Triggered how the left thrives on hate and wants to silence us. And yes, next time, I kept promising myself I was going to get into this long, deep sort of psychological dive into how the Trumps are made up, but we're only able to touch on it. So we'll do it again.
Let's do it again.
The book's great. I've been enjoying it. And I think I think in summary, I will say this. I think a lot of people have an idea of you, and they have an idea of everyone. Everyone on the right has an idea of everyone on the left. Everyone has an idea of everyone. You sit down, you listen to their book, or you read their book, or you hear their story, and you realize, they're people.
Yeah.
They had troubles, they had trials and tribulations. There are things they like cooking, that you like to do, or camping, or hiking, or whatever. And it will tend to build a bridge to bridge that chasm of, I hate him, I'm nothing like him, I hate the ground he walks on. When you take a dive into this book, you'll realize that Donald Trump Jr. is a lot more human, and you may have a lot more in common with him than you think.
Well, that's a great endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you.